Seems to me, Professor Kay, correct me in your speech if I'm wrong or if I was wrong, that one of your dominant views is that it is better to regulate structure than behavior. Reading what you've been writing, you seem to recognize that regulation is more likely to succeed if it works with human nature and not against it. In practice, this means don't try to stop people from responding to incentives, but put the right incentives in place. It seems to me that this type of thinking should resonate with many of us here in Brussels and more generally in the European Union. And I feel that this is something we should really discuss today.
Much of the discussion we have about the functioning of financial markets relates to the efficiency of markets in a narrow technical sense of efficiency, which relates to market integrity, liquidity, price discovery, issues of that kind. These things are at best intermediate objectives to our fundamental goals of high-performing companies and the returns which savers ought to earn from that high performance. That perspective, even if it's unusual, is, I think, the perspective which has led to the formation and development of Finance Watch, the perspective that markets are for users, not for participants.
So today we're discussing in this meeting the continual growth of short-termism in financial markets and how to correct it. Short-term behaviour presents huge problems. The most obvious is stability and providing reassurance to end investors who fund by saving our economy and financial markets. One aspect of short-termism, which is very obvious, is high-frequency trading, an area in which Finance Watch has done a lot of work and where many now question whether there are any benefits at all of sustained duration. It may mean that there is better price discovery, but as the K review points out, that's not the same as value discovery.
We have to look at the banks, which nobody has much spoken about banks. Let me remember that 2/3 of the project financing initiatives came from banks. 2/3 of the total of financing was for banks before the crisis, and now there is a drop in that type of finance. Of course, it's not a problem for corporate firms, but it's a huge problem for SMEs, and as regards long-term credit, banks do not want now to go in this direction. So this is a real problem. And do asset managers come to the rescue and give alternative answers? The answers to my question was given by John Kay. I'm not add much in our debate about that. Asset managers are not giving the right answers. One of the reasons being the regulation of the markets, but it is not the only one. There is a structural problem there. But why not, and this has not been stressed sufficiently, why not promote the role of institutional long-term investors?
One recommendation in particular we like at Fidelity, which I'd like to highlight, is a recommendation in favour of restricting equity incentive awards to career shares to be held at least until termination of employment. This mirrors our own internal approach to incentivisation, and by locking in and aligning the interests of managers and shareholders over the long term, career shares should also enable companies to simplify what has become an overly complex discipline. And we've talked about this already, but complexity, in my view, is clearly the enemy of accountability.
Finance is not in sync with the real economy. I mean, it seems desynchronized from the real economy. And it strikes me that it's focused on prices, but even on value, which is to try to give, to say everything in one figure about the past, the present, and the future. And that is totally in contradiction with what happens in the real economy, where what you have is a cycle of cash flow accumulation that only leads you to a result in due course. When the cycle is achieved, you have a cycle where you're an insurance company, You have another one when you're a baker. You have a third one when you are, I don't know, when you have another job, when you're in a different industry. And there's a tension, if not a contradiction, between seeking immediate information about everything and giving due respect in order to understand the economy and have proper information about it, to what really time is about in economy. Time is forgotten in finance in a way. It's just computed and forgotten. To say that finance clashes with the real economy is no small statement. Because finance was established, and in particular, Professor Kay, in the UK, consciously as a key component and a building block of a strategic economic development some decades ago. And the sense I have when I listen to you is very much that what you're saying to us is that it's getting out of control.